Thank you to our partners at Complete Kids for partnering with our platform and sponsoring this episode. Complete Kids is a Gaston County born and Belmont headquartered organization that specializes in behavioral, occupational, physical, and speech therapy for children. So if you're someone who's actually wanting to continue or begin your career in children's therapeutics, and we have opportunities for you at Complete Kids. There are careers right now for you to explore, from getting started all the way to a board certified behavioral analyst and everything in between, and being able to not only give back to the next generation of children, but continue to call Belmont your home. Complete Kids has received approval from Belmont City Council to occupy the old Belmont Middle School and will be occupying in 2023. So if you want to call the Belmont Middle School your office and be a part of this culture, giving back to the next generation of children and still having the opportunity to be in our community, then visit CompleteKids.com and select the Careers tab. Thank you again for your partnership, Complete Kids. Back to the episode. I know it's a good interview, and I forget that we're even recording. I'm just enjoying learning from you, and I hope that people are just really enjoying getting to know you now. Because what I'm hearing is you allow yourself to, diversity being more than a color, diversity of thought.
Absolutely.
You allow yourself to subject yourself to a lot of diverse thoughts, to say, I don't want to just echo chamber and say, I should go to this college to learn this thing, or spend time with these people. It's no, I'm okay with opening up and learning.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that people are afraid of exploring altering perspectives or differing perspectives than what they're used to? Welcome back to Building Belmont, and our mission to create connections, share stories, and share information is, again, revolved around our time here today. But the person that we're interviewing today and having a conversation with ultimately is someone that embodies that connection, stories, information.
Thank you.
And you're a little bit involved everywhere. You can't go too far without running into you somewhere. So we have pastor, community leader, part-time marathon runner, cyclist, cross trainer, Pastor Ray Hardee. Pastor Ray Hardee, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, man, thank you for joining us. It's such an honor knowing about you and your work in the community, and thanks for doing Building Belmont. It's just a great opportunity to blow up our city in ways that are strategic and helpful, and there's 15,000 great conversations out there, right?
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. As I was telling Ray as we got started, hey, what's kind of the mission? And again, it was to make people feel like, hey, they can have a conversation with you, and then they see you at Harris Teeter, Aldi, or whatever your flavor is, the gas station, and they say, hey, Pastor Ray, I saw you on the podcast, and they may not have connected with you, but kind of breaking down some of those barriers. And you are a very approachable person. I mean, from the first time I met you, it's like I could just sit down and have a conversation with you. But we'll start with an easy question here, all right? Why Gaston County?
So my wife imported me to Gaston County after we were married. I was born in High Point, North Carolina, and I'm a preacher's kid, and I've lived in New Orleans twice, Daytona once, Indianapolis once, Columbia once, Conway, Myrtle Beach area, but been in the Charlotte area since I was about 11 years old. And then I graduated from West Mecklenburg. I went to Gardner-Webb University and finished there, worked there for 16 years before planting a church, and we're still here. But my wife imported me into Gaston County. Her name is Andrea. She's from Dallas, which was the first one. The Texas one, the Chamber of Commerce did a little better job, but I call her the Yellow Rose of Dallas.
So the Dallas, North Carolina really is the first Dallas? Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. This is an original 13 colony, which was a culture shock when we came out here, and people would say, I'm from Dallas or Denver.
Right.
And I'm from New Mexico, so Dallas and Denver are, the Dallas and Denver.
Right.
And just, just up the road. So when we have friends or we're going somewhere and we say Dallas, like Texas, not North Carolina. Yeah. But growing up in Charlotte, what was the brand around Gaston County when you were growing up? Because
yeah.
I'd love to know, because some people that move here, they don't understand what that kind of disconnect is, but even what's happened in the county, even just over the last 5 years, I mean, as opposed to 15, 16, 20 years, has really helped to bring it a long way, and it's a place people want to call home. Right. What was that like for you? I've had a conversation with Jim Morasso from Webb's, and he said growing up in Charlotte, it was kind of like in The Lion King, like that was the dark place. Like, don't go there, Simba, right? But what was the brand? Did you ever experience any of that growing up in Charlotte?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we really never came across into Gaston County unless we were going to the North Belmont Fish Camp, which was right not too far from here. But it's more just kind of an unknown kind of place. I don't necessarily like labels and running people down, but however, people in Charlotte kind of looked at Belmont as a place and Mount Holly and Gaston County in general. It's kind of where the lint heads were, because this was the textile capital of the world. But what I found is a person that's lived here for over, 2 decades, 3 decades, almost 4 decades now, is that, man, I want to live anywhere else. So where can you go to the mountains in the morning, finish the day at the National Whitewater Center, and in the meantime, ride bicycles around the county, ride horses, and just be around people that are real salt-of-the-earth kind of people. And that's what I love about Gaston County. It's real people that are making a real difference. And part of the excitement of what we're moving toward in the next 20 years, I've been part of the Gaston 2040 vision team that is now being implemented. And actually our phrase is One Gaston 2040. And you're going to hear more about that in the days and weeks and years ahead as we pull together different community leaders to work on subtopics, housing, connectivity, things that we're doing to make the county bigger, better, more inclusive, all those types of things.
What is Gaston 2040?
So Gaston 2040 is a vision team that's been pulled together from sources of education, business, government, community, various different kinds of social service organizations. And we've been working on it since 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. And essentially, we started out with a big funnel of a lot of people, and it's kind of skinnied itself down to where the funnel is down here at the bottom. We've got some key missions that we're working on. Hospitals have been involved. Health departments have been involved. Various different points. And we're just beginning. We just got started with the idea, but the whole theme is to build one Gaston by 2040.
Mm-hmm. The headline of the new branding around Belmont is Many Threads, One Community. And I love it for Belmont, but I love it for the county even more because that's kind of how the county works. If you pull a thread in Lowell, you'll have connection in Stanley, or if you meet someone in Kings Mountain, you'll have connection in Belmont, Dallas, McAdenville, Cramerton. They're all very connected in a way.
Right.
So being able to give more light or maybe even a little bit more explanation to that, this one Gaston,
right.
What does that look like maybe practically in ways that you can share? I'm sure there are things you can't share, but
sure.
what does that look like?
Well, it's all in development, and it's not anything that's highly secretive. The whole goal is to optimize this place that is just the jewel. And I call this the gem of the Piedmont. I mean, and the crown jewel even of the Piedmont. If Charlotte is the Queen City, we're the jewels that shine. At least we're one of the bright jewels that shine. Essentially, what's happened in our county in the last 30 to 40 years is a gradual transformation away from what I would call cultural fiefdoms or textile fiefdoms. Used to be that, oh man, if you're from Belmont and you're from Mount Holly, your primary identity came from being in Belmont or being in Mount Holly or being in Cramerton or being in Gastonia. But now there's a real melding together and a unifying of people that are working together to make a difference. And we're a very diverse county, but it's not always reflected in everything that we do in government and politics and business. And we want to bring that whole idea of one Gaston to come together to make a difference in the future. Yeah. It's going to be real powerful, and it's going to take everybody to do it.
Well, from the point of diversity, I know that you're involved in some things in the community as an advocate or as even a champion in some diversity, equity, inclusion work, and you are the pastor of the Point Church, which has been around how long now?
Since 2001 on April 15th. So this Easter, we will turn 22 years old.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're going to talk more about the Point, obviously, and the work that you're doing here. We are at the Point now, so if you walked in and joined on a Sunday, you're going to see right where we're at here in the lobby, so come by and visit. But, as a pastor and being involved in these ways, from Charlotte, ultimately being raised in different places, obviously you've had different experiences. So what can you link or connect to the experiences that you've had in these other places and driving diversity, equity, and inclusion here? And I'll even preface that to say I'm from New Mexico originally, really, really small town. I like to say if the middle of nowhere had a middle of nowhere, that's where I'm from. Right. I mean, like when people hear middle of nowhere out here, they think Kings Mountain. Our nearest town was 3 hours near a city, and it was Amarillo. So it wasn't like a big city, right?
Wow, yeah.
So really from the middle of nowhere, but in the military, I got to get exposed to a lot of different cultures, and the barracks were a melting pot from everywhere. And you wouldn't get those perspectives otherwise. And the more I grew in life, the more I understood that unless you play sports or you're in the military or you travel often, you do not get exposed to those ways of thinking. And we fail to think that, everyone sees that there's a whole big different world out there. So what did you learn, and even what's going on here in the county now that makes you a champion of those kind of things like diversity in just every way of operating?
Well, it really goes back to the fact that Christ showed and demonstrated love to everyone despite their color. to use a couple of catchphrases, the whole idea of Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. What I've learned over the years is that when the Black Lives Matter sentiment came along, I'm not so much for the movement because they undermine the family and some of the things that are important to our values that are biblical, but the whole idea of Black Lives Matter is definitely important. And all lives do matter. So in particular, I grew to understand during the pandemic that when people cry out Black Lives Matter, they're saying, like, we don't feel like we matter as much as y'all do yet. So to me, it's really about the fact that whether you're red or yellow, black or white, that you are precious in God's sight and that we are to draw the best out of one another. Yes, we have things in the past that have been hurtful, usurious, and things that are difficult toward various races, but it's our job to make sure that we continue to lift one another up. That this gender kind of stuff is not more important than that gender. You know, when God says He made us male and female, I believe He did uniquely say make us male and female. But even in the context of marriage, He says that those two people work in mutual submission toward one another. We see throughout the Bible that Jesus went to those people that were, quote, the outsiders and not just the insiders. As a matter of fact, a lot of the times, the people He got most mad at were the people that were the insiders, because it's our responsibility to make a difference. And I have a phrase that's kind of a life mission statement for me, and it's I want to make a difference with people who want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference at a time that makes a difference. And so that means drawing people together in various kinds of ways. I have a unique title here, and that I'm a lead pastor and a founding pastor, but part of my title is cultural architect. And so part of what I seek to do is to do things that are like this, that can draw people together that are perhaps of very different ethnicities or from different towns or from different places to make a difference in this community too. Nobody will make a greater difference, or no geographical entity will make a greater difference in this area of the country than this county in the next 20 years.
Wow. That
Absolutely.
is a powerful statement.
Yes, sir.
Why this county?
Because of its location, because it is wildly underdeveloped in terms of most geographical locations next to large cities. So you think about Atlanta and how it's become. This was kind of like that last section of Atlanta that got developed. And it's 10 minutes from the airport. It's an area that is now become a bedroom of community and a very desirable bedroom community of Charlotte. I mean, even in the last 15 years, in 2007, we did our first feasibility study about building a place called the Point Church. We had various geographical people come in, and the stats told us that the average age in Belmont at that time was 51. Now the average age in Belmont is somewhere between 30 and 32, 33, depending upon which statistical source that you see. So, and it's also my responsibility as somebody who's a lead pastor, a founding pastor, and a senior pastor to begin developing other leaders to pass this on to the next generation as well too. And so I spend a lot of my time in the community doing what I call cultural architecture. Back in 2017, I called various different gringo pastors like me and African-American pastors and people who are Hispanic pastors and say, you know, let's get together and spend some time together. So for about 2 or 3 years before COVID, once a month, we would meet. I would buy them sake from our great famous restaurant here. We would go to Habitat for Humanity and their boardroom to get away from our turf, and we would just get in a room together and just say, hey, what are you excited about? What kind of things are on your mind? How can we cooperate together to do various things? And we did some great things together. Our Convoy Hope initiative a couple of times, Compassion International experience. But just getting in the room and talking to one another, not because of an emergency or because somebody had just gotten shot, but to intentionally spend time with people that in our past, our parents would have called other, or they're from the other side of the tracks. Well, they're coming to spend time with us. We're going to spend time with them, and we're removing those barriers between the places where we are, because that's what Jesus would do. This Sunday I'm preaching about the Good Samaritan, and the good guy was the outsider who helped the insider. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what Jesus did as part of my faith. Yeah. What it's important, we believe that Jesus is the hope of the world, and the local church is the hope of the world, even when it's functioning effectively.
Well, being proactive in your leadership to bring them together, that's exactly what that is. It's leadership to say, hey, you know, let's get together and let's learn from each other, understand and connect and intentionally build a relationship. And one great downfall that people will have, and I think the intentions are good, but you also don't want to connect with someone just because they're fill in the blank. I'm
That's
a
right.
minority, so I want to connect with that rich white person, or I'm
Right.
a more affluent white person. I want to connect with that impoverished brown person, because then you remove who they are, and
Right.
you're saying that, some practices and some businesses, corporately will start to identify, well, what about diversity? Let's
Yeah.
look for a candidate that's XYZ color or XYZ background. And then that's actually degrading to a person, because
Sure.
now you're not seeing for who they are, you're just seeing them for that one thing. And so it's actually inadvertently destructive.
It is.
But for you had more of a heart posture to be proactive, and I really advocate for that diversity and inclusion is a heart posture. It's not a decision.
Right.
If you don't have that posture to connect with people that aren't like you, it doesn't matter what decisions you make, because it won't be sustaining, right? It's more like a checklist. So you were proactive about that to bring them together. Why was that important to say, hey, let me reach out to these pastors? And did you have a base of relationships at the time that you could reach out to them? Or you said, hey, I'm just going to introduce myself and let's go?
I had some, but also knowing some could also lead me to some others. And so it basically became an organic thing, not like, well, we got to get those 3 guys to the table by this date or anything like that. Instead, it was very much that way. I read something years ago in, I guess, what would be called a pop psychology book of its day called Psycho-Cybernetics. That's a big title. Basically means it's a theme for positive psychology. And I learned something from that book that really has inspired me through the rest of my life, and it's this single theme, that everybody I meet is my superior in some way. Everybody. Even people that you think might not be as able as you are. I have people in my family with different abilities. That used to be called disabilities. But I have a sister who has cerebral palsy and a niece who has Down syndrome. I'm going to tell you what, nobody in the world inspires me more than them. Nobody loves more real and raw than they do. Yeah. So I learned at a very young age that it was important. Here's the other thing. I grew up in New Orleans in the 60s. And I played with kids that were not of people that were black, people that were Creole, people that were various different kinds of colors and that kind of stuff. And it was not about that. Ultimately, what my parents showed me was how we were to treat one another. And so my parents, I'll go straight out to say this, my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, a lot of them were just straight up racist. I mean, they just were. But my parents had decided that in their generation, they were going to stop this. And so I never heard the N-word until I went to live on the farm after my father died. And I was like, Mama, what is that they're saying? And she said, that's something that we don't say. And when we moved to Charlotte after my mom remarried, my father tragically died in a plane crash with one of my brothers in 1969. And that's why we went back to live with my grandparents in Conway. And man, wonderful people. But they were always kind of like, well, those people have their place over there, that we have our place over here. My mom and dad taught me, no, we are part of God's mishmash of gender, diversity, color, and we're going to treat people that way. But when my mom remarried, we moved to Charlotte, so it was right in the middle of the forced busing stuff. And Charlotte was in the middle of that in the nation, all the lawsuits and stuff. And my parents never said to me, well, he could go right down the street to Paul Creek Elementary Church or Paul Creek Elementary School, but instead they're busing him to University Park. My parents were like, nope, this is what the government says we're going to do. It's not a hardship on us. It's different. And so I went to University Park Elementary as a child, and then Coolwood, and then West Mecklenburg High School, West Side. And that made a difference. Their attitude made a difference. When an African-American man came in our church who was married to a white woman, and they walked down the aisle, which was the old school way of church membership, my dad was, we're not going to exclude them. We're going to include them. Yeah. And some people would have a hard problem with that, and they would say we're going to leave or whatever, but I saw the courage of acting with diversity among my parents, and so it became natural for us to do it. By no means am I perfect. I still have those voices in the back of my head that sometimes challenge, well, why are they doing this way? But I'm reminded of something that one of my professors told me. I just finished a degree at Harvard University in religion and social justice.
Wow.
And she said, it's not about we versus us, or we're we versus them. It's just about us. And that's really the truth. Red and yellow, black and white, and all the diversity of colors, abilities, intellects, neighborhoods, families. We all are created in God's image. And we all bleed red, and we all need to care for one another. Not just when somebody has done something tragic or there's been a shooting, certainly then, but also we just need to know people that are different than us. So, and our church is very much that way. Obviously, this is a very prosperous community. People are very gifted in the way that they gift us with their resources to help us to be able to do the mission. But yesterday, a lady was standing right here in our lobby area, right next to our next step section. The mission of our church is to inspire people to take their next step in their journey with Jesus. And she's somebody that has struggled with homelessness and accepted Christ. She came in to be prayed for before the service. And we're working on a plan to help them, along with other community resources, to give them that hand up without a handout. But in the same room yesterday were people that are millionaires or multimillionaires that live on Reflection Point, South Shore, Cramer Mountain Country Club, or whatever. So we want to be that mashup of the world as people come together.
Yeah, well, go back to, it's not we or them, it's us.
That's right.
And you skated right through this. So are you a Harvard grad?
I am a Harvard graduate.
So I'm going to go
Don't
back
hold that
and
against me.
I'm going to re-record our intro and also include, Harvard grad, because I know you're a very humble man. You'd have skated by that, but congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
What drove you to go back and further your development and education
Well,
in
I'd
that
already
way?
done some master's degree. I did a master's degree in counseling at Charlotte. I did master's of divinity studies at Gardner-Webb University when I worked there. But I always kind of wanted to see if I could cut it in an Ivy League education. And I had the wherewithal and
We
the
know
bandwidth
you
to
can
do it.
now.
I cut it. They gave me the diploma. They're on my wall and
Awesome.
that kind of stuff. But it also taught me how to think. So I was raised very conservatively, and I still am very conservative. But I'm moderate in the way that I treat people. Really what Harvard allowed me to do was to learn to think with more of the middle and left side of the spectrum of the way to think. I can tell you why people think in a certain kind of way and why they come up to a certain kind. Not everybody at Harvard is far left or even moderate. People are different, and it's a great mashup of people throughout the world. But there's a reason that hard and Harvard rhyme. It was hard, but it was very rewarding.
Yeah, well, congratulations, and
Thank you.
even being able to subject yourself to continue to learn. I think that's the thing that gets lost on us is ask more questions. And I want to learn, I want to study, and I want to get to know someone's story. Why do they think that way? What informed that? Because genuinely, we just don't know how they were raised or how they were brought up to believe. Right. And you shared there that your parents made the decision consciously that, hey, we're going to see people the way that Christ sees them. We're going to connect with them in that way, and it doesn't matter. At the same time, it's so surreal to me because being raised in New Mexico or the Southwest, the further you get in our country west, the more removed you are from those kind of truths. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I moved out here, Elevation Church, moved us out here to join staff.
Great
and I was
church.
Connecting with all of my volunteers and leaders. And I asked, all of them, why? What brought you to this church? And the outstanding, comment was diversity.
Right.
And because they were so used to black church, white church, Hispanic church, whatever it may be. And one of my leaders, he was raised genuinely, and even until he had found Elevation, I think maybe 8 years before, so this would have been 2012.
Right.
He just still had a lot of mistrust of white people. And he said, my grandfather's brother here in Gastonia was murdered. He was tied to railroad tracks and left there to die by a white man. And it blew my mind because, again, being out west, you're so far removed, right, from that it wasn't. That was, 2 generations ago. That was his grandfather's brother. And so it really brought it all back around. I think it's helpful from that perspective just to say you would never know that unless you ask questions.
Right.
So continuing to learn and not feel like you have someone figured out. There's so much blessing in that, but there's also so much, back to the point of the podcast, is connection. I know it's a good interview, and I forget that we're even recording. I'm just enjoying learning from you, and I hope that people are just really enjoying getting to know you now. Because what I'm hearing is you allow yourself to diversity being more than a color, diversity of thought.
Absolutely.
You allow yourself to subject yourself to a lot of diverse thoughts, to say, I don't want to just echo chamber and say, I should go to this college to learn this thing or, spend time with these people. It's no, I'm okay with opening up and learning.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that people are afraid of exploring altering perspectives or differing perspectives than what they're used to?
Well, first of all, it's not easy. It affects your friend group. It affects your identity group. There are some people that don't want to come here because of who I am. There's some people that want to go somewhere else because of the way somebody else is and the way they think or whatever. And we saw that in living Technicolor in the pandemic, right? Mask, no mask, shot, no shot, 2 shots, 1 shot, stay inside, don't go outside, all those kinds of things. But really what I had to learn during the pandemic was that I had to learn to love people physically, those that were present in front of me, and all those that are also those that are digitally.
Did you make up this word?
No, I did not. I wish I could say that I did, but I heard it from somewhere. But
Okay.
my favorite song these
Fidgetally.
days is "Let's Get Fidgetal." But anyway, you're probably too young to remember Olivia Newton-John singing that. But really, it means that we've got to learn to think in different ways to get along with different ways. But it really does go back to that core belief that I believe God has given me the ability to see the person that He's made you, and the person He's made Zach, or the person He's made Mike, or Keanu, or for Bubba, or for Billy, or whoever, and understand that that person's my superior in some way. And once you have this understanding, and that becomes a core part of your life, then you can also do something else that I practice as a mental thought. I've never said it out loud, but with every person that I see, I try to tell them I love you with my actions, the way I pay attention to them, with my attitudes. In the book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, Og Mandino said, I will say in silence and to myself to those that I meet, I love you. And it will unwrinkle their brow, bring a smile to their lips, and their hearts will be open to me. And so it's not about them being open to me. It's really about me being open to them and God that's working in their life. I have friends that are Islamic. I have friends that are predominantly Jewish. I have people that are this kind of Christians and people that are that kind of Christians. Bells and smells Christians and people that are rock and roll, bangy, bangy, hip-hop, let's go throw down in Miami kind of Christians. Yeah. It's our responsibility to live that out in the unique way God's done it for us and the unique stories that He's given to us.
Do you ever feel like, and I know that this is personified and exemplified through Christ, and faith is, very central to our walk. I was raised far away from God, and I won't say it's because I was raised Catholic, but the Catholic faith had a different way of operating that, it was a lot of obligation in my family. Now, Belmont has a great Catholic contingent that's very active and very strong in their faith, so I have no knock against that. But, in building a relationship with Christ, the whole act personified as being a bridge.
Right.
And I think in this day and age, we feel like, and I'll just speak from my perspective here personally. So being raised in New Mexico, Hispanic, Native American, Mexican, and then living here, it's two totally different worlds. But I was raised to fear police. I had an uncle die in police custody. So respect them, but fear them and don't trust them. Well, instead of saying, I'm not going to like police, I actually became a police officer.
How about that?
And I spent 3 years of my career doing it, right? So being able to speak to that altering perspective. And at the same time, I was raised very, very democratic in my beliefs. Being minority, being poor, that was the party that, although I didn't understand why, my mom registered me to vote when I was 18. And I showed up at the polls and I said, why do I only have these people? And she said, because you can only vote for those. I said, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But as I moved here, I started to challenge, why do I think the way I think? Never was into anything political, so I see and lean more conservative now. And most of that's because of my faith, right? At the same time, was raised very poor, now a business owner, and I would say I've been blessed to connect with people, make the kind of money that my family would just never understand. My first family member in my immediate family bought a home last year. It was my brother. He's a truck driver. I'm so proud of him. But no one else in my family has owned a home. We're just raised that poor. And so there are these differing perspectives. And I really struggled with it through 2020 because I felt like, and even up until now, I feel more confident in it now, but it's like, okay, I'm too brown to be white. I'm too white to be black. I'm too Christian to be loving. I'm too loving to be Christian, right? Because some people want it to be all hell and brimstone, and I don't see it that way. I want to connect with people. So I just felt like, I just feel like I'm not enough either way. I feel like a bridge.
Yeah.
And, again, Christ exemplified that. And I realized, well, if you feel like you're being walked on by both sides, that means you're doing your job.
You're bridging.
Because you're a bridge.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
So, how do you feel? Do you see that? And I know a lot of the connection, a lot of the things that you've done here in the community, there's a lot of fingerprints of Ray Hardee all around here. Even
glory to God
this
if I've
church.
helped in any way.
Absolutely, you have. And, that was a big part of wanting to have conversation with you today. You are someone who's so influential in this community that I want more people to connect with you. Yes, because I think you are a great person to connect with.
Thank you.
100%. And the things you're connected to and the kind of impact you want to bring to the community, more people need to know that.
Right.
So do you feel that in your approach? Like, I'm a bridge. Sometimes I feel walked on by both sides. That's all right. I'm bringing them together either way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Even in selection of leaders here, on the very same day when somebody complimented me for being pro-life, but not firm enough in the way that I'm in the pulpit. I need to be more fire and brimstone. I had somebody else say to me, well, you got to be pro-choice if you're really going to be. And both of them have been people that we looked at for leadership. So I got criticized from both sides, so I felt like I was walked on just like you're talking about. Ultimately trying to figure out ethically how to do things in life kind of goes back to this illustration that I gave to our church before COVID, during the last election cycle, as a matter of fact. I used the seesaw. I went and bought one off Amazon, and I put it on Sunday morning, and I used it for about a month and a half. And I said, whether you are on the left or the right, each one of you, even if you're an atheist and agnostic, you could remind me of God in a way. Because typically, not everybody that's on the left is that way, but there are a lot of people that are. On the right are people that are, use your gun. If they don't work, they don't eat. If they cross the border, send them back, all that kind of stuff. So what it really helps me to understand is when people think the way they think, they're really displaying two dimensions of God. See, on the seesaw, God is a God of grace and truth, of love and righteousness. And each side tends to lean to each side. But we're to be the fulcrum, to not just be, well, if you don't work, you don't eat. Off with your head. Deport them out of the country, all right? Or neither is it anything goes. No matter what you want to do, you should be able to do what you want to do. No, the grace and truth. And now, the thing about that is that we're always moving. You're always trying to figure out ethically, what am I supposed to do? But here's what we do know. If one side wins and slams down the seesaw, if the other side wins and slams down the seesaw the other way, nobody's thriving, and somebody's not having fun. And so it's our responsibility to go, okay, I might not agree with you about the source of your faith. I might not agree with you about whether you have a D, an R, an I, or whatever, Green Party symbol after your name, or a L. But instead, I need to run everything through the filter of Scripture, because ultimately I believe that's the Word of God for our lives today and every day.
Absolutely. Well, I've really continued to enjoy this conversation. I think it was Warren Wiersbe that said, love without truth is hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And truth without love is abuse.
Yeah.
So that constant balance of love and truth. And that's something that, again, being able to connect. And I really hope, and honestly, Pastor Ray, I wanted to connect with you. We have some stuff that we want to share and announce here as far as your leadership and things you're doing here in the community. But I said coming in, I just want people to get to connect with you. And I really do believe if we were just sitting here having a coffee, this would be a conversation we're having, and it wasn't anything that is outside of who you are and what you're about. And so I hope that people do feel connected in that way, because one thing that 2020 did to us, amongst a lot of other things, is it led to the dehumanization of those around us, right? That evil, dark person, or I can't stand that person, instead of saying, no, that's a human. So what we can do through Building Belmont is, because you're going to run into Pastor Ray at the gas station, hey, that's a human. That's an actual person I want to connect with, and not say, oh, those big, bad people over there. Right. So I want to humanize people again. I think we've gotten so stuck in this mindset of, well, if you believe this, that must mean you also hate this.
Right.
Or if you hate this, that must mean you also love this.
Right.
And two things can be true at once.
That's
and
true.
So being able to connect people, our community is special, and I do mean Gaston County, that there's a lot of blessing to be had by connecting with one another. Right. And we can't do anything about the world. It's cliche to say I can't change the world, but I can, the people around us. Right. And that's what I really am hoping that we get to continue to do, just in connecting people on Building Belmont, because we've had people that we connect with that do think differently. But that doesn't stop me from being curious. I'm more curious. I want to learn more about why they think the way they do. So thank you for what you're doing in the community, and I hope people are inspired to say, wow, the pastor of that church will go on this podcast and this microphone and share so openly about his love and his truth, right? His grace and his leadership, and being able to lean in. I hope that inspires other people to do the same.
Thank you very much. I've been working with Habitat for Humanity the last couple of years in a process we called Reimagine Us. And essentially, the whole theme of this came from a story of something happening when I was 6 years old. We lived in New Orleans where my dad went to seminary, but we crossed the big Lake Pontchartrain Bridge to serve a community called Franklinton and Clifton on the other side of the bridge. And during the summertime, there was no graduate school in the summertime, so pastors who would serve churches on the weekends would go back to that community and stay all summer there. And so one day I was playing with a friend of mine named James right next to the gas station where my dad was working and making a little extra money, because one of the guys in the church ran the gas station too, so he was making some extra money. And James and I were playing. I was barefoot, he was barefoot. I had a pair of cutoff shorts, he had a pair of cutoff shorts on. I had an old T-shirt, and it was 100 degrees and 100% humidity and New Orleans, that kind of stuff. And he said, I want you to come to my house. And I said, okay. And so we were the same age, and he said, I want to introduce you to my mom. And we walked across the street, And it was like an old sharecropper's shack. Gray, red tin roof, smoke coming out of the chimney in the middle of July in New Orleans, which is just one exit short of hell, by the way, in terms of how hot it is during the summer. And we walked up the back steps, and I walked into the kitchen, and his mama had a long dress on, a towel around her neck, and she was cooking in a wood stove. And I looked, and there were holes in the floor, and I could see rats running under the floor. And then he said to me something that was really interesting. He said, I want to show you our color television set. Well, this is like 1967, right? 68. I was like, man, these people, they're covering it up. And he took me in the front room, and they had a black and white television set in the corner covered by a piece of yellow cellophane. So they could tell people they had a color television set. And I remember walking off the front porch of that house, and essentially God spoke to me and said, even as a little boy, it's not right that other people live like this, and you need to do something about it. And so we've begun a process with Habitat for Humanity to bring together people of multiple ethnicities to help build the new Dixon Village together, various different kinds of churches and friends like Rodney Freeman and John McCulloch and Ben Hinton, some African-American pastors, and Raphael, one of the pastors that's over, a Hispanic pastor over in the west side of Gastonia in Bessemer City. And we're going to do some stuff together. And people that are part of churches that are multiracial. Really, it's interesting, yesterday morning on the first 2 rows in our church, there were three white guys that were married to Asian women. You know, and to me, it's like the dream of Martin Luther King is coming true. What I hate about what's happening in our culture is we get so polarized to not realize that the dream is coming true in so many respects. Yeah. There's still ways to improve. And there's still ways, I'm sure, that people that are African American still feel like, man, we're still not included to the level of all lives matter either. To me, you do. And there are people out here that do indeed care about that, and they want to make a difference in your life, and to show you that people that are born in the 60s like me, that we're not our parents, we're not our grandparents. Here's the deal, I love my grandparents. I love my aunts and uncles. But I did not love that streak in them that would call somebody a name that I have never used in my life. It's never come out of my mouth. And it's because my parents taught me that. Yeah. It was harder really on them as a habit to break that habit before they taught us to live that way.
Yeah. Well, you know, being able to connect in that way, you mentioned something there, Dixon Village. For those that aren't aware of what that is, what is that?
Dixon Village is a new housing development in North Belmont, kind of between Mount Holly, Stanley, and Belmont, kind of in that golden triangle over there where Habitat for Humanity is building, along with market rate homes for people that have gone through the Habitat for Humanity process. A couple of which that I know very closely, and it's just very gratifying to see that not only are people that typically would not get a chance to buy a house like your brother, but also to earn the way into doing that and to give back to others as they're doing so as well. Yeah. And then what we do as ministers and with our churches is we offer labor, just kind of like some energy equity to go over there. And you're going to see an African-American pastor, an Hispanic pastor, and a white pastor, or a multiple person that's from multiple races and that kind of stuff, swinging hammers together. Yeah. Or putting roofs on and stuff like that, because that's what it's really all about. And so it was really interesting in my graduate school for Harvard. I did this project called Reimagine Us, and Habitat was so gracious, along with Kay Penninger, to help to do this. And one of my classmates said, "Hey, Ray, don't you see what you're doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You're building a house for James. I knew the boy that I played with when I was young, who was a different ethnicity." So you're making right what God put you to do a long time ago. Yeah. And that's just one of the initiatives. I also work with the YMCA. I'm on the FAR board chairman, and also work on the Metro board at the YMCA. The YMCA is a great organization that makes an impact all of our community. Plus, we work with nonprofits that are helping to feed people. Rodney Freeman, who's over at Mount Zion Restoration Church, he has fed hundreds of thousands of people in the last 12 years. Wow. And so I like being one of the white guys and white ladies and gentlemen that go and show up in the line in a predominantly African-American church. And I don't do it as much as I should, but he allows me to do that. And when you talk about a superior, man, Rodney Freeman is just a superior guy to me, and just allow me to be part of the team to help feed people and make a difference in that kind of way.
Well, you know, to all of those points, the areas that you're involved, you know, we serve on the Montcross board together as well. Any other areas that you get to serve in and influence that people should be aware of?
Yeah, so I'm on the Mott Cross Board, Chamber of Commerce. I'm on Habitat for Humanity's Board of Directors. I'm on the Metro Board at the YMCA for the whole region, and then also the chairman of the board at Farr YMCA. Our church actually started at Stowe YMCA, so I'm
Okay.
on a capital campaign to actually expand the Stowe YMCA, and we're in the process of raising money to do that too. I've also been on the board of the Backpack Weekend Food Program, where we make sure that 80% of kids, 7 or 8 of every kid in our county qualifies for free or reduced lunch. So on the weekends they go hungry, except for dozens and dozens of partners, hundreds of people that make it possible for them to get a backpack full of food every weekend. And so I've been a part of that as well, and it's just an honor to do so. I'm also on the Unpacking It board, which is kind of like a sports ministry for fans that are out there. We kind of unpack sports lessons that apply to real life and that kind of stuff. And Fantasy Football Fellowship is part of that, and it's really cool. But I've got my finger in a lot of different places. And so you told me that you thought I was a county commissioner or city councilman.
And I've heard it from probably 5 people. County Commissioner Ray Hardee.
The rumors that I'm a county commissioner or city councilman have been greatly exaggerated. But I'm grateful for those people that are, like Ivory Craig in Mount Holly and Martha Stowe here in Belmont, and just the great people in Gastonia that do a great job over there too. I'm grateful for Ronnie Worley and just great people that are on our county commission. And somebody's asked me to run for office, but I always tell them that I cannot afford the alimony. I don't know if I would survive that.
Which means?
Which means that my wife says, we'll do the church thing,
okay.
but we're probably not going to do you being an elected official.
That's fair.
So I love the Yellow Rose of Dallas, and I like living with her more than I do being an official.
That's fair.
But I respect those that do.
That is, I think your priorities are definitely in order there.
Much.
Well, we'll close with this. You, in your leadership, and I did, assume that through their conversation we're going to get to see your leadership exemplified, and we definitely have. And you lead a initiative, a program here that is actually part of a much larger program, which is called the Global Leadership Summit.
Correct.
And the Global Leadership Summit is something that I got to experience for the first time last year because of you, which thank you. But had heard about it, long before. It's something that's involved in a lot of communities. So tell us about what Global Leadership Summit is for those that aren't aware.
So the Global Leadership Summit brings the current speakers that you're going to see at Books A Million or at Amazon's top 20 bestseller list that are business, government, thought leaders, educators, business people that are throughout the world. People like Pat Lencioni, who's written The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team and various other books like that. People like Jim Collins, who is an atheist, but he comes to this conference where there's kind of a mashup between faith and business. Mm-hmm. So here's the best way to put it in a phrase. It's fresh, actionable leadership content to help leaders who are better to keep getting better. Because the phrase that we use as we recruit people to come to the summit is everybody gets better when a leader gets better. And so it's a 2-day conference over August 3rd and 4th. It's during the daytime. Imagine instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars to take your staff to some place to hear a speaker, instead you come to hear and interact with a global audience of people. There will be over 100,000 leaders that are going to be at over 200 sites throughout the United States and Canada. Ultimately, it's broadcast around the world as well, too. It's taken, it's translated, and it affects at least another 250,000 people. But it's the best leadership training that you can imagine. It's so good, as a matter of fact, it costs $129 is the current going rate to sign up for the Global Leadership Summit. But I'll make you the very same promise that I make to everybody that I recruit to come to this. If you come and you invest 2 days of your life in it, and you find that it was not what we said it was, I'll give you your money back. And I've never had somebody say it was not good. It's just like you can bring your whole team, you can bring a number of your team. Caramont Health has been one of our partners. They brought a lot of their senior nursing staff last year. Gaston County Government, the Sheriff's Office has brought as many as 20 to 25 people here in the past. Atrium Health brings a number of their business division to come, both virtually and in person. They're extraordinary partners in the community that are doing some really, really good things. Yeah. And it's a way that we can all get together and hear from these common thought leaders about how we can better ourselves as leaders. So on August the 3rd and 4th, from like 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock each day, we're going to be talking about how every leader gets better in the community and the world gets better when we get better. And everybody has influence, even people that don't have a title.
And I'm glad that you do host it here, so Gaston County is aware. You do host it here at the Point Church in Belmont, so you get to experience that conference here. And what is most impactful to me, and I have a really strong bias about things being more personal, the more powerful.
Yes, sir.
You're going to love the speakers. They have a great lineup. They have great elements. I mean, it just blows you away. And I love that we get to do it here, which is the most impactful part to you here in the community, is that the leaders of leaders in the county will be here under one roof. Absolutely. And that's most impactful. So you can connect with them. You can have conversations with them, and you are going to have great content. I love Global Leadership Summit and what it's about, but I wouldn't watch it from Zoom if I were at home.
Sure.
I would, though, join leaders here in the community, meet in one place to experience that. So I really do hope that you all, we have plenty of lead time now between here and August, that people get involved, to bring their team, to come as a leader, and you'll see obviously both of us there. We'll get to meet with you and connect with you there too.
Absolutely. And I'm thrilled to do that. I'll be willing to spend an hour of my time in the next 8 months to come to talk with you or your team, if you're a business leader, about why this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Think about these as extended TED Talks with the best-selling authors that are the hottest authors for a reason in our area. And not in our area, just in our entire world. It's a global audience. I'll tell you what's really thrilling to me is that last year, not only do we have senior leadership at the hospital here, and 2 hospitals here, but also Dr. Kim Eagle was involved in our conference last year. Pearl Burrs-Floyd, who is the Director Equity Inclusion Officer of the county, she attended as well. Our school superintendent, Dr. Jeff Booker, is one of his staples in terms of his leadership, and he offers the opportunities to people in the school system to come as well. He doesn't make them come, but he offers them the opportunity to come as well. And Kay Penniger, the senior leader of Habitat for Humanity, was there. The police department in Shelby brought some of their senior leadership here, or it's not Shelby, but rather in Belmont. I spent so much of my life at Gardner-Webb, sometimes this reminds me of Shelby, but it's just a powerful thing. Local pastors, Jordan Braswell from Kramer United Methodist Church was here. We had local financial planners that were here that make a big part of their business. So it's really a mashup of all the best leaders in the world, learning from the best leaders in the world to impact the local community. Plus, you get to sleep in your bed every night, and you get to have lunch with your staff, and you're spending a fraction of the dollars you would spend to go do anything anywhere else. So 100%. Love to talk to you. Invite me to your civic group, if it's Rotary or Civitans or Kiwanis clubs, or just your Sunday school class. I'll be glad to talk to you. Your churches, it's that good.
Well, it is really the perfect pairing of business and faith. And I loved the lineup. Even last year, we had former CEO of Disney to
he's CEO again.
He's CEO again. Okay,
Bob Iger's.
So Bob Iger,
they brought
was
him
there.
back.
He was speaking about a book, all the way to books and leaders that were very much so psychology oriented. Even to one woman who really stood out to me. She is the first African American woman to run a airline.
Yeah.
Right. She spoke, and so
Absolutely.
there was just a lot of diversity in thought, diversity in background, diversity in experience, diversity in stories, and diversity in development.
Right.
So love Global Leadership Summit. Glad to be supporting, glad to be sharing the message. And, Pastor Ray, we'll continue. This will be one conversation of many. You're someone in the community that, although I want to share people's story and allow them to connect with you, because I know you're a very generous man, but you do not have enough hours in the day to have a conversation with everyone. You're someone that I'd really just love to continue to have conversations with as a regular contributor of sorts, to talk about what's going on in the community, so people can become more familiar with your voice. I think your voice is one that needs to be not magnified. What's the word I'm looking for?
Spread.
It needs to be
echoed.
Your voice needs to be heard. And again, more connection to the point of the differing perspectives. And you're a Harvard grad. You still teach at Gardner-Webb as well. What do you teach there?
I'm teaching group dynamics this semester. Typically, I'm a part of the public service program, so I've taught there since 2007 and served there full-time on staff from 1986 to 2001, and it has a special place in my heart.
Well, thank you for what you're doing here in the community, and again, for being able to connect. And you're someone that you'll get it when you meet him. You just want to continue to have a conversation. I'm thankful that you made time for us to come and join you here so we can record this. And I'm excited to see what comes of this connection, be it through The Point, through everything else you're doing in the community, and of course through Global Leadership Summit.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's an honor to serve our community with you.
Thanks, Pastor Ray.
Can I leave with just two thoughts?
Of course. You take it away.
Just remember this, is that everybody is your superior and my superior in some way. And if we greet people with love in our hearts and it comes out in our eyes and our smiles and our attitudes, that alone will change the world. And I look forward to changing the world and making it better with you. God bless you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Building Belmont podcast. I'm your host, Keanu Trujillo, reminding you to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And of course, share with a friend, share with a neighbor. We'll see you again next week as we capture more stories, create more connection, and share more information here on the Building Belmont podcast.